Welcome to Trinity Radio.
What's over there? Did you see the aliens?
I'm Braxton Hunter, and along with me is, all of us.
Jonathan Pritchett.
Aliens, what?
I don't know. You were looking over there at something.
I thought my camera wasn't plugged in.
Oh.
But we're here now. Thank you all for showing up to hear us talk about new research as it relates to nuns, and in talking about nuns, atheists.
Not nuns, N-U-N-S, but
right,
nuns.
not Catholic nuns, but nuns that aren't Catholic. There you go.
N-O-N-E-S.
And, Jonathan, we're going to go ahead and tell you that if you think this is clickbait, no, there are a number of atheists that believe in things that if you're the sort of atheist, particularly the naturalist type who likes the Aron, Matt Dillahunty sort of way of thinking about things, might surprise you to find out what some atheists believe. And I know, atheism is just a position on one thing, and it's a lack of belief in something, and it's not a worldview. I realize that all may be true, depending on who you are and how you mean it and use it, but we are going to talk about some strange, I think some surprising things that atheists turns out believe, some of them.
Yep.
All right, so Jonathan, why don't you set this up for us?
Well, I think it was January 24th. Pew Research came out with some information on the religious nuns and what they think, who they are, that kind of thing. And so they've actually lumped atheists and agnostics into the religious nuns, but then they put them in their own subcategories. So they branched that out that way. So when we say nuns, that could either refer to all of the nuns, or it could refer to what they call nothing in particular, versus those who self-identified as atheist or agnostic.
Yes, and I also want to go ahead and clarify that the atheists, so you've got atheists and you've got agnostics, and then you've got nuns. And all of those might be nuns.
You've got nuns.
All of those are nuns. The Venn diagram is nuns is all of that.
Yeah.
And then atheists and agnostics, as you say, is a subcategory, a slice of that pie.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, but if you this is again where people say, why do we have to keep talking about it? Let's just get rid of it. But here's the thing. If you define atheism as one who lacks a belief in God, now I don't care to spend a lot of time on this, but if you do, I think atheists would appreciate me pointing this out, that if you are one of those that talks about it that way, then agnostics would also be, the number of atheists in this study would increase dramatically, or at least substantially, in line with how many agnostics there are, because they also lack a belief in God, right? But if you take the position of, no, an atheist is someone who maintains that there is no God, and then agnostics are people who are agnostic, then you kind of justify those two categories. But anyway.
Yeah, well, they justify those categories namely because agnostics are allowed to say that they're agnostic, even if atheists want to pull them into their category.
Right.
So as much as atheists would say, yeah, on this definition, agnostics would technically fit our definition of atheism, I also want to push back and say, but agnostics, they don't want to call themselves atheists. If they prefer to call themselves agnostic, then
they get to choose if they identify as an agnostic.
Right. They get to choose their own identity like everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
right.
So
okay.
Choose your own adventure, which is interesting because when you shake this out, there's 258 million. This is supposed to be represented as a sample of the U.S. That's how this all works. But there's 258 million adults, and if you take the number of atheists, well, 28% are nuns, and 17%.
Wait. 28% of what are nuns?
The total U.S. population.
Adults.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that shakes out atheists being only 17% of that 28%.
17% of the 28%,
Yeah.
or a few percent for the whole
Yeah, you
nation.
have roughly 72,240,000 nuns. Okay.
Not counting babies because they lack a belief in God.
Right. They're talking about adults. So in the
If they
U.S.,
do.
yeah, they're just talking about the adults they survey.
Right,
so
right.
the U.S. population, 258 million, they are 72.2 million of that pie. That's 28%. So you're looking at atheists being 17% of the nuns, which is 17% of that 28%, right, of people. So comes out to 17% of that 72, but it's only 4.7% of the total U.S. adult population. Agnostics would make up 5.6%.
Okay.
But taken together, like you were talking about, if we were to put them all in the same basket, agnostic, atheists in the same bucket, that's 10.3%, so 1 in 10.
Okay.
Which that's up.
So 1 in 10 persons you speak to,
it used to be
adults,
0.5%,
is either an atheist or agnostic.
Right.
Okay.
Which is higher than it's been.
Well, yeah, we
in the
don't like
past.
that.
Yeah, we don't like
that to go down.
But it's still not
that
like...
we don't want agnostics to exist. We want the people to exist as no longer agnostics or atheists.
Right. But, I mean, the biggest chunk of that pie is, of course, the ones who just say nothing in particular. Now, there could be some atheists or agnostics in there that did not self-identify as either, but it could be the case that, some of them who were either atheist or agnostic
Just didn't say.
So
Okay.
we leave that
All right,
open.
move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
What's the next big thing?
Pull up the article and we'll start reading it.
Okay.
Just so that give everyone some context of what we're doing here.
Okay, the article is called Religious Nuns in America, Who They Are and What They Believe in. It's linked in the description. A closer look at how atheists, agnostics, and those who describe their religion as nothing in particular see God, religion, morality, science, and more. This is by Gregory A. Smith et al. And today, about 28% of U.S. adults are religiously unaffiliated, describing themselves as atheists, agnostics, or nothing in particular when asked about their religion. At Pew Research Center, we get lots of questions about this group, often called nuns. What do nuns believe? Are they opposed to religion? What are their views about science? Is their growth good or bad for society, and why? The survey data shows most nuns believe in God or another higher power, but very few go to religious services regularly. Most say religion does some harm, but many also think it does some good. They are not uniformly anti-religious.
That's good news.
Most nuns reject the idea that science can explain everything, but they express more positive views of science than religiously affiliated Americans do. So they like science more than quote-unquote religiously unaffiliated or religiously affiliated Americans do, but they reject the idea that science is the way to explain everything.
Yeah, and it's jumped from
explain everything.
Yeah, and it's jumped from 16% who were identifying as nuns back in 2007 to 28%. So the religious nuns is continuing its upward trajectory.
That's not good.
Though it looks like if you want to pull up the graph,
I'm looking at the graph.
I know, but nobody else on our screen is looking at the graph. So if you want to pull up the graph so that everyone can enjoy what we're looking at, if you look at the upward trajectory.
Is it titled Upward Trajectory?
It is, which in your file folder, that would be in alphabetical order.
literally looking.
TUV.
Oh, here it is.
Now notice it's steadily rising, and then there was that little dip at the end, so it got over 30%, but it has dipped back down.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, I think.
How many? Okay, so that's 23. What is that? Each notch is a year. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
So it's like 22. It got a little higher. That was good news.
Yeah. So, but overall, the trajectory is not good.
Okay, so that's bad news.
If you're concerned about the religious nuns as a category, which I think as we go through the data, we're going to see that do you say data or data?
However the spirit moves.
Okay.
Data usually.
Yeah.
And in fact, here's some data coming. Here's some data coming in. Stephen A gives us 65 sec. Thank you so much. If Eucharistic miracles are authentic, would it not validate RCC doctrines? Here is something I never do, especially to someone who just gave a super chat, and I'm so sorry to do this, but we literally did an interview last week. I interviewed a non-Catholic who believes that there is really good evidence for Marian apparitions and things like that have a Catholic flavor. And so we talk all about that in last week's episode. We could, just for Jonathan, since he's here. Jonathan, what do you think about Marian apparitions and stuff? Do you think there's good evidence?
Well, this is talking about Eucharistic miracles.
Yeah, but still, it's it's in the same wheelhouse. What do you think?
Would it not validate? Well, not necessarily validate. It just could be a thing. So it could correlate to certain beliefs that Catholics have about such miracles, and that's embedded in their doctrines, but not necessarily confirm Catholicism.
Right. Or it could be like one of the things we talked about is maybe God they want to meet him. They're trying to meet him in a particular way, so he condescends to that.
It points to the confirmation of, does it not validate? Well, it can. It can validate those particular things if they are authentic, right?
Yeah.
But I take all of that stuff in the same way I take every manifestation of a charismatic gift. Okay, so
which is to say
case by case basis.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
And I'm a charismatic.
You know what it works against? The notion that naturalism is true.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So let's keep. Oh, and thank you for this other super chat while we're at it, real quick. Thank you. A.E. Numa says, "Hey guys, have you ever looked into Steven Pinker and his books, Enlightenment Now, book for examples? Enlightenment Now. He is one of the most eloquent thinkers and speakers, future guest." Well, I have to look into it, and of course I know who that is, but I haven't read his books, I'll be honest. Jonathan?
No, I don't read
Okay, but thank you for that incredible super chat. So appreciate that. And thank you all showing up. Now, Jonathan, go ahead and continue on your exposition about this, or should we move on?
Well, I just think it's interesting that just from those first 3 bullet points, right, from the article, they're not uniformly opposed to religion.
Right.
Right. Now, they do say that it does more harm than good.
Yeah, but no, they don't say that.
Most say religion does
some harm. But many also think it does some good.
But there's a graph in here that shows a good chunk of them do. And then,
You want me to keep going with this?
Yeah.
Surveys have consistently shown that many Americans view religion's declining influence in society as a bad thing. Nuns tend to vote less often, do less volunteer work in their communities, and follow public affairs at lower rates than religiously affiliated people do. But the latest data shows that on a variety of measures, lower rates of civic engagement are concentrated among nuns, whose religion is nothing in particular. Atheists and agnostics tend to participate in civic life at rates matching or exceeding religiously affiliated
now, ain't
people.
that something?
What? Atheists and agnostics tend to participate in civic life at rates matching or exceeding religiously affiliated people.
So, of all the religious nuns, these none in particulars, and you agnostics are...
they act like Christians when it comes to... Or better.
Yeah.
Or they're more
atheists and agnostics
are
the agnostic and atheist crowd, right? That make up 10% of the population. They are as civic-minded when it comes to volunteering in the community, when it comes to voting and all of that.
Yeah. Not bad citizens, you're saying.
They're not bad citizens. Like these,
you heard it here, folks.
Yeah. So atheists get props, and we're not. We want to give them props, and if you're one of the religiously affiliated people, namely if you're a Christian and an atheist is outdoing you in volunteering to help your community,
get your act together.
That's right. Don't be showing
up.
High
five to that atheist, but we need to represent.
But all of these nothing in particulars overall and generally are less active in that.
Here are 8 of the questions, the article says, we received most often, along with brief responses. Click the links for more information, blah, blah, blah. Okay, look at this. This is fantastic. Jay Tizzle is in the house and says, and thank you, do you guys think that even though atheists define their view as a lack of belief in God, that still exists in atheistic worldview? Like, do I still qualify that as atheism? Like, first of all, let me just say, if I'm understanding your question right, like regardless of what they say, do I still put that in the atheist category? Is what I'm understanding you to ask, unless Jonathan corrects me or has some deeper insight. And when I look at that, what I'm thinking is, and as I said in my debate with Matt Dillahunty a few years ago, that whenever I'm talking to someone, I don't really care what they call themselves. I care what they mean by what they call themselves. So for what we do on this channel, where mostly we're trying to encourage people to have these kind of discussions and maybe try to reach others for Christ, it's more important what are they actually saying than, that's why I encourage people to ask questions like, what's the meaning of life? What happens when we die, if anything? How do we get here? Because these will help you kind of figure out, despite the label, what a person actually really does believe. Now, a person who is an atheist is, in terms of apologetics, is looking for evidence for God or is ready to be presented evidence for God. So is an agnostic. So to that end, I kind of treat them the same. But I think there's a relevant difference between someone who lacks a belief in God and someone who maintains a position that God does not exist. And I think that it is a substantial enough difference to drive a wedge between both of those calling each other atheists. And we had an interview with Steve McRae, who wrote an article about this and went over it. And I would just encourage people to go check that out.
Yeah, and I agree with him, though, that if you are going to identify as an atheist, you can go with this lack theism all you want, but you still have a burden yourself. And I think that that's a very helpful conversation that I wish more atheists would understand. And
Yep. All right, so
shout out to indeed, though, that was one of my thinking about the civic activity of atheists and agnostics among their peers in the nuns category, is that, we see this atheist church idea, or a lot of atheists, like my friend Aaron Martin, will
honestly
go,
atheist. I had it just up on the screen. Shout out to Congregational Humanism.
Well, that's why I'm talking about it, because my friend Aron, for example, he's an atheist friend of mine on Facebook friend. He and I go way back, and he attends a Unitarian Universalist church because he came from a Christian background, but he still wants that kind of community aspect of what church offers. And I would suspect, as we've had previous shows on way back when on the idea of atheist churches and kind of duplicating that, and they go sing Imagine from John Lennon or whatever it is they do. And I would think that this kind of that community aspect is where that civil sense of duty grows out of.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Let's keep trucking with this.
Yeah. Let's get to the cool stuff.
Who are the nuns and how are they defined? Do we need to see that?
Well, we've already talked about the numbers.
Why are nuns non-religious?
Yeah, why are
When
they?
asked directly why they are non-religious, 2/3 of nuns say they question a lot of religious teachings or don't believe in God. Many also bring up criticisms of religious institutions or people, including 47% who say that one extremely or very important reason why they are not religious is that they dislike religious organizations, and 30% say bad experiences they've had with religious people help explain why they are non-religious. Now, I wish you didn't have those bad experiences, but I do want to say, as lovingly as I know how to, I don't know how I don't like these organizations, or even I've been hurt by a member of the organization, should speak to the truth of that the organization is presenting, or even that is an organization that you should probably be a part of. I mean, for example, I'm what did they say? That they're let me bring up the critical, extremely or very important reason is they are not they dislike these organizations. I dislike hospitals in the sense that I'm glad they exist, and I'm really glad we have them. But I dislike being in hospitals. And I've been hurt by people in hospital. They've told me things about my weight that I didn't want to hear. Now, obviously,
they're kind of like me.
That neither one of those things speak to whether I should go to that hospital or whether what they're telling me is true. And I just think that needs to be stated.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I find that interesting because when you talk about the number of people that we're talking about here, we could throw out percentages that if you go back up to that graph, no. Down. There. Okay, so most nuns cite disbelief or skepticism. And when we talk about, 60% of these nuns, I mean, that shakes out to 43,344,000 adults in the United States of America who are questioning a lot of religious teachings, right? And the 32% don't believe in a God or higher power. Which, is an odd percentage of saying that's one of their main reasons, because that leaves a 5% difference between the atheist agnostics in total at 37%, and this is only 32% are saying they don't believe in God or a higher power as
that is interesting
as the main as a extremely or very important reason for why they are non-religious. So that lets me know that at least 5% of atheists or agnostics are,
what?
That's not the reason they're not religious has nothing to do with God.
Oh, right.
As an extreme out of that number. Now, I mean, the majority of them right? So that's 68% of the nuns, therefore, didn't cite that at all, right? So I just think that that's pretty interesting. We're talking about a lot of people,
But now we're really coming to the issues
but
that are surprising, aren't we?
Yeah, but one of the things that, I'm kind of surprised about a lot of this, because when you talk about almost 40 million people in the United States, 39,732,000, right? 55% of the people interviewed have a problem with either religious people. That's that graph that we're looking at. They're not looking at it, but unfortunately, but we could.
I can put it up.
Yeah.
You got to tell me. Which one? This one?
No. The one we were just looking at.
Oh, dadgummit. Why they aren't religious.
Yes, thank you. That 55% have a problem with either the organization of religions or religious people themselves. They've had 30% say that they've had a bad experience, which, to be honest with you, I kind of thought that would have been higher.
Yeah.
If
just because you hear it so often.
If we believe TikTok, it's like it seems like all they are talking about, but that turns out to only be 30% of the overall the nuns, but the net is still 55%. So over half of them have a problem with either the people or the institutions, and I think that's a sentiment that has been around for a long time that I think goes back prior to the emergence of the nuns, right? I think it goes back to
the
when
boomers said that kind of thing.
Well, hence all the non-denominational churches that have sprung up that are basically Baptist churches, but non-denominational, because that's kind of sentiment that goes back.
Or Assembly of God. Sometimes they're like Assembly of God.
Yeah, everyone likes the AOG. So,
okay, let's see. Thank you again for this. Jay Tizzle says, to clarify, atheists say that they don't have a worldview because they lack belief. But that seems nonsensical. Naturalism is atheistic, for example. All right, now you're getting into territory. Let me just clear off a spot and just say something real quick about the notion of atheism as a worldview. Way back and further back than that on this channel, I did a video on atheism and is it a worldview? That's what it's called. It's in the yellow period for this channel as you're looking at thumbnails. And in that episode, I took a look at what Pew Research had found that atheists, people that identify atheists, like what their political leanings and other leanings are. And what we found was there was great unity among atheists. If someone worldview includes atheism, or if you like, does not include theism, then what ends up happening is typically a range of at least political things that are very similar that speak to underlying ideas. So is it when you remove theism from a worldview, there are certain features that do tend to seem to be similarities across people who have that, who have walked away from God and have atheism or have no theism. So in that sense, is it a worldview? I think loosely you can almost point to that as a group of people that have more similarities than just the lack of belief in God. But to your question specifically, not all atheists are naturalists. And that is a relevant point because we're going to get to that here in just a moment in this very report. So
very surprising information coming up.
So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Thank you for Super Chat. And Tim the Ancient is back
Yay.
And says another name for this demographic could be called the can't be bothered with important questions crowd.
Well,
Tim
but,
the Ancient.
but actually, they can't further investigation for sure. I mean, that's the thing when it comes to some of this data, I encourage anyone that's just interested in what we're talking about to click on the link to the article and explore, really mull over all of the graphs in there. Don't just read the top page, but it branches off into several different pages to break down each category of those 8 questions, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of information that I think both Christian, like if you're in this YouTube space, if you're into apologetics, you're into evangelism, or you're an atheist, and you're trying to do your what do they call them, counter evangelism or
counter
apologetics or whatever. There's a lot of information in here that I think that would be surprising to both sides. So I'm going to pick on the Christians here today, too. I've already done a little bit of that you should obviously be as or more helpful in your community than the atheists
Right.
are. But I think atheists and Christians can also say that these nothing in particulars, the largest chunk of that, of the nuns, they need to step up. You know?
Yep. All right. So, MJ, thank you so much. MJ was on a show with us last week on this channel on Thursday.
And will be tomorrow night.
And will be tomorrow night. We'll hope you'll do that. Also, check out a video on them released tomorrow on Taylor Swift, and she has a big problem with God. She may have a big problem with God. And also, back on the Marian apparitions real quick and other related issues. Obrando says, guys, the apparitions and Eucharist miracles are very real and demonic. So this was one of the ideas that was presented last week on the show, the interview with Caleb Jackson. So we laid out several things. Caleb doesn't like that approach, but it is certainly a resource we have in our worldview.
Well, I also accept the fact that some of those could be demonic, just as some of the manifestations of any of the charismatic gifts could also be a counterpart. That's why I'm saying you have to take these things on a case by case basis.
All right. Are all nuns non-believers?
Yes, this is what I think is important.
No, not all nuns are non-believers, Jonathan. They are far less likely than religiously affiliated Americans to say they believe in God as described in the Bible. But most do believe in God or some other higher power. Just 29%, Jonathan, reject the notion that there is any higher power or spiritual force
and
in the universe. The nuns don't belong, not even mostly, to the atheists.
No, I mean, if 13% of the nuns believe in God as described in the Bible, right? 56% believe in some other kind of God or higher power, okay, of the religious nuns. Now, 29% believe in neither, and then 2% are unclear, which at best is 31%.
Yeah. That don't believe in a higher power.
Yeah, which if you go back to the 37% of atheists and agnostics taken together in the same bucket, which they parsed them out. We're going to
too many numbers. It's too many numbers.
Yeah, but I was saying I think that's interesting. But if you look at the number of Christians or religiously affiliated people, and I think they break this down overwhelmingly Christian. If you go back up. If you're religiously affiliated, 41% believe in God as described in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And so the 19% that believe in the higher power and 40% that believe in neither that are religiously affiliated strikes me as somewhat odd that the bulk of that has got to be Christians that would be identified in the United States of America as religiously affiliated. It's still the case. So not even half of that bunch believes in God as described as the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not good.
That is something that needs to be fixed.
You don't have a clear response to that. You're just saying, look, that's scary.
Yeah. And what's interesting about the religious attendance, right? I mean, 90% of the nuns never, either seldom or never attend. They're never going to church, right? And then 3% will go monthly, 7% will attend a few times a year. That could just be weddings and funerals. Right. But I do also want to point this out. That 90% of these nuns who identify don't ever go anymore confirms something you and I have been talking about on the program, that the people who are still in church, we used to always hear the church is the biggest mission field and blah, blah, blah. And we kept saying, nah, I mean, there's no social advantage to still going to church for most people in most places in the United States. And so that the overwhelming number of people who are still showing up for church on Sunday mornings or even once or twice a month, they mean it.
Yeah.
Right? Because that doesn't leave a lot of people left in the United States who are just pretending because so many.
It does clear the deck a little bit.
Yeah, it does clear the.
Are nuns spiritual instead of religious? Some nuns are indeed spiritual. About half say spirituality is very important in their lives, or say they think of themselves as spiritual. Most nuns believe animals other than humans can have spirits or spiritual energies, and many say this is true of parts of nature, such as mountains, rivers, or trees. But these spiritual identities and beliefs are not unique to nuns. In fact, by many measures, people who identify with a religion tend to be just as spiritual or even more spiritual than nuns. Well, yeah.
Yeah, so let's break that down. I have a chart on this because they had another graph about the spirituality of what they consider themselves, right, as whether important or not important. It's that spirituality JPEG.
Yep. All
right. So I think this is interesting that 20%, right? Somewhere in there is what it says.
Oh, you need to see it, don't you?
The net, yeah, I wear glasses for a reason, right? So you have 20% have a net of atheists have this net view that they think spirituality is very important or think of themselves as spiritual.
Yeah, 20%.
Yeah.
And 41% of agnostics.
So that's with the 13% that say very or somewhat, or the not to, they're pulling a little bit from that 86% to get the figure of 20. And so you have 20%, that's 1 in 5 atheists who consider themselves spiritual, but yet I have no idea what that means.
Well, you could be an atheist Buddhist and be spiritual.
Or you could be you could be an atheist Wiccan.
You could believe you're interacting with spiritual stuff, but just not know from whence it comes, or have some sort of...
Right, and those numbers go up to 41% when we're talking about agnostics, but overwhelmingly the nothing in particulars are like 60% of them consider themselves spiritual. But let's look at the religiously affiliated down at the bottom. Let's pick on us, right? Net 79% of religiously affiliated people. If you break that down into Christians, it's still that same 79% figure. That's 21% of Christians who self-identify as Christians. 21% don't really consider themselves to be spiritual. It's just not that important at all.
Yeah.
That's just weird. Now look at the number. Evangelical is like higher than Catholic. It's higher than like mainline denominations, right?
Yeah.
But it's on par with the historically black Protestant churches.
Was this in the article, or did you pull this from somewhere else?
No, that's in the sub data.
Okay.
Right. You have the top sheet that you're reading from right now, and then there's all that sub data that I was encourage everyone to go look at, because it's. I mean, maybe we geek out on this stuff. That's why we have the lab coats on for the thumb. But I mean, I think that there's important stuff here.
I do. I think you're right.
For everybody to learn. But there's another thing that I want to look at that I want to pull up, because we were talking about the animals and it even gets into not just nature, but it gets into like magic crystals and things like that. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, no, I pulled
Rhett and Link type stuff.
I pulled. Well, what are they? Because they would be in the nuns category. But
Rhett landed on a religion that he invented where there's, well, not really, that there's ideas just floating in the ether. And if you don't grab one, then somebody else will. And this is consonant with the notion that when you write a story or write a song or come up with an idea, it almost feels like you're discovering it rather than creating it.
Now,
and then Link came up with an animal religion where he gains religious teaching from his animals.
Now, it's important to point out that being spiritual or believing that you have a spirit or believing in spiritual energies could... Yeah. There's no definition given for that.
Yeah, what does that mean? What is that?
What does that mean?
We know what that is on our view. What is that for y'all?
What is it on our view? What do you mean?
What is a spirit?
No, we know what that means. What
does spiritual mean?
Okay, that's what you're saying. No, I know what we mean on Christianity. I thought you meant you.
No, we know on our view what it means.
Yeah, but I thought you were saying we know what we think they mean.
I don't know what I think they mean. Actually, in many cases, what I think it actually means, like in the Katy Perry sense, I'm sorry, Katy Perry. That's not very nice to Katy Perry, but I think it's like a necklace, basically.
Yeah.
It's an aesthetic. It's, I don't want to say, I don't really know what to say. I don't want to say I'm a Christian. That's a big price tag anymore in that culture, in that world. So what? I'm spiritual, and I don't know that there is much content to that. I think it's a necklace that is worn.
Right, it's an accessory. It's I don't want to sound like I am soulless. So I want to say that I'm spiritual, so I can sound deep and interesting without having to use any effort to explain myself. Right.
Right.
So it becomes a catch-all term. But
honestly, atheists said, and he's an atheist, an honest one, says, I've never understood a functional definition of spiritual myself and would not use it unless someone defined it in a specific way that aligns with my naturalism.
Well, naturalism is essentially just the only thing that exists is material.
Yeah.
And so what if nothing else, I think spiritual should at least refer to something ethereal or non-corporeal or something. But if you pull up that graph, because let's look at this, because honestly, atheists might get annoyed by this. I find it delightful.
Pull up which thing?
An
article?
image. No, an image from the article.
Now I'm panicking. I'm panicking. I'm not going to be able to accomplish the task.
Yeah, you can accomplish it. Okay. There it is. Pull that folder up. Okay.
Which
non-human spiritualism.
What?
Non-human spiritualism.
Am I for that? I guess I'm for that.
Well,
I believe animals.
Yeah, I mean, but what's funny is, okay, so remember the percentage of atheists that did not consider themselves. Only 20% of atheists considered themselves to be spiritual or it's important to them or whatever. But 33% of atheists.
Here it is. Here's the thumb.
Yeah. 33% of atheists definitely consider animals to be spiritual beings. Whatever that means. They think that animals have more spirituality or spirit energies, whatever that means.
What does it mean? What does it mean, honestly, atheist? Kevin DeTradcath. Kevin, who used to be Catholic, what does it mean?
What does it mean? What are these?
Make it make sense, you atheist.
Yeah, you're not spiritual, but but you believe that animals have spirit energies or are spiritual. Explain that one to me as an atheist. Because there's a 13% increase there that, 20% of atheists are like, I'm not. It's this spirit.
You know what I love about this, Jonathan? This is one of those few moments where there was what I feel was some pretty decent clickbait on the thumb, but it really wasn't clickbait. There really was a crazy thing that 33% believe.
Yeah,
not crazy, but it's just shocking.
Shocking.
I believe it. I believe they're spiritual beings, but I'm shocked that they also.
Yeah,
believe.
I mean,
honestly, atheists though, why don't you? I understand why you're a naturalist. You can't affirm spirit dogs. Dogs have spirits or have a spiritual aspect to them.
Spiritual energies that are getting.
Yeah, spiritual energies. But
spirit energies is, I think, the phrase that.
If you held my dog or Jonathan's dog, I would think you're just lying if you say that.
Yeah,
because they're definitely all.
And as I've stated repeatedly, I believe my dog Oliver is in heaven for dogs, and all dogs go to heaven.
Brando, I'm with you on this one, pal. I'll go with you on it. It means New Age, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, which is a song I've been singing for our longtime viewers. That is a bigger issue than the 10% of people who identify as
How is this one Kansas, but this one is not Arkansas? Make it make sense, America.
Come on, don't pick on my state.
Okay.
All right. But it goes on. I wish you wouldn't have pulled that graph down, because now we're going to get into the numbers go down slightly. But 59% of agnostics and 68% of the nothings in particular. Go back to the non-human spiritualism slide again. They affirm that. Now Christians, 54%, right? So that's fewer percentage of Christians believe that than agnostics. People haven't been listening to Trinity Radio, I suppose, because we talk about, and we need to get Eric on here to talk about, or failing getting J.P. Moreland to talk about the souls of animals, right? But I think that's interesting. Catholics on the animals other than humans higher than the Protestant percentage. But atheists also, there's 26% of atheists, so more than 2 in 10 are going to believe that the nature, rivers, and mountains and the trees are all having spirits.
How many? 2 in 10 atheists?
Well, 26%, so over 2 in 10. Atheists believe that. 55%, over half. Agnostics believe that mountains and trees and rivers, and this just goes back. I mean, people pick on Paley all the time, right? But when you are in awe of transcendent beauty, it is hard not to
Yeah, y'all got to do something about
evoke
that.
something transcendental.
Y'all got to make us not be in awe so much.
Right.
People get in awe really easy with nature.
Now, here's a
'cause it's
fun
awesome.
one. Cemeteries and memorial sites, right? Ghosts and goblins, I suppose. But, like, there's some sort of spiritual thing.
Oh, they asked him about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you want.
Oh, I bet a bunch of them believe in
You
ghosts.
keep pulling it now.
What, you want to go back to that same one?
It's all on the same thing that you just
Golly.
had on non-human, which, I mean, cemeteries have non-humans now. Is that what they're not talking about pet cemeteries. They're talking about cemeteries. So I don't know why
What?
they have this categorized as non-human spiritualism. But anyway,
There you go.
yeah.
What did you
For
want to see?
atheists, the number goes down again, right, to 18%.
I thought we were going to talk about ghosts.
Well, that's cemeteries or other memorial sites, right? 18% believe that they have spirits or spiritual energies. More atheists believe that dogs have spirits or spiritual enemies than ghosts. You didn't know that. You thought it was the other way around.
Wait, so they're saying with this cemeteries or other memorial sites
Give off spirits or spiritual
that the
spirit
ghosts and
energies.
stuff you might see at a cemetery. That's
Yeah.
That's
So
not very explicit, but
yeah, they can have spirits or spiritual energies. So I'm saying ghosts because I'm wondering what else they would be talking about at these memorial sites having. But more once again, more atheists believe that animals have spirits or spirit energies than believe in ghosts and memorial sites and graveyards giving off vibes. But agnostics
people have seen experiential, anecdotal evidence for animal spirits in the relationships they've developed with their
Yeah, but
animals.
it's still interesting that nothing in particular is, all the numbers go down as you go across to the final one. Certain objects like crystals, jewels, or I guess that meant stones, like precious stones.
And 9% of atheists say, heck yeah.
Heck yeah, they're all about that. They're all about the magical healing crystals that you put on
And
your back.
29% of nuns in general.
Yeah, 29% in general, 25% of agnostics. So the agnostics are higher on all of those categories than the atheists, and then the nothing in particular are higher in all of those categories.
More women in the nuns in general believe in all of this stuff than the male nuns. But the male nuns, which sounds odd to say, the male nuns believe, I'm kind of surprised that 20% of male nuns believe certain objects like crystals, jewels, or stones.
No, 20% of the male nuns.
I know, I'm surprised by that. I'm surprised that
1 in 5 nuns.
yeah, because I think of the crystal thing being more of a feminine expression or something. I don't know. Anyway,
I couldn't tell you, but I mean that's not my thing. But if you but pull that up again.
my point.
You keep,
Are you serious?
Yes, you keep
We
killing
got
me.
to the end.
No, we didn't get to the
Yes,
end.
we did.
No, because we're gonna pick on.
My southern accent is going to start coming
No,
out.
because we're gonna be nice and talk about how many Christians believe in energy crystals.
What is that? Where?
More Christians believe in energy crystals and healing rocks than atheists.
Then male
Not
nuns.
not more than nuns, but
Almost as much as nuns. Well, I mean, 25.
23% and 25% on the agnostics. But
Man, there's a whole
29
bunch of
total.
Christians. There's 50%. Half of Christians believe your cemeteries, other memorial sites, you
Giving
might-
off spirit energies.
might run into some bad spirit energy.
Yeah. And
Parts of nature
Yeah.
might run into some spirit energy.
Yeah, 43%. Now, I can understand the cemeteries. I
Oh,
get
here we
that,
go.
And the animals, I get that. But that high of 46%, or what
The
is it,
Catholics
43%?
believe in that stuff more than the Protestants,
Yes.
all the way across the board.
Yes.
The main line believes it more than the evangelicals.
All the way across the board.
Yeah, across the board.
Yeah.
Historically
Well,
black.
that's all the rainbow sparkle
Protestants.
creeds and stuff, and they're putting
Yeah.
their good vibe.
historically
beads
black
everywhere.
Protestants are believe in it more. All this stuff more. We're pretty well the same on whether animals or other humans have it.
Yeah.
Because we both have access to the same body of evidence, animals. Yeah. So there's your. Can I leave this now?
Yes, you can. But like I said, I want to show how many Christians believe in magic rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, there's stuff in here for everyone to learn from. Okay.
Believe in. I can believe in it. I can believe there's demonic stuff like that. I can believe.
Now we're going to get into the does religion do more harm than good, or is it equally good and bad? And then the science question of that survey that I found interesting, and I also found morality to be very interesting as well. So when it comes to science, one of the things that I saw about this is that between the Christians and the nuns, and then all three categories of the nuns, which remember they have nothing in particular, agnostic and atheist, right? Okay. Only 35% believe the natural world is all that there is. Okay. When it comes to what is in the world. Now, what do they consider to be a natural part of the world? I don't know. Yeah, we're going to go into the science-y part.
Okay,
right?
Most nuns say science does more good than harm in American society. On average, nuns are much more positive about science than are religiously affiliated people. At the same time, most nuns believe there are limits to what science can do. For example, 44% of nuns say there is a scientific explanation for everything, while 56% say there are some things science can't possibly explain. Now,
yeah, and by the way,
there's a bit of interpretation in this.
Hold on. 21%. They break it down further, and I have that if you want to pull it up, or they can just believe me that 21% of the atheists believe that science can't explain everything.
Yeah, but
and 45% of the agnostics said that science can't explain everything.
But depending on how they mean this question and how it was asked, and I think this, without me knowing more, it makes it useless for me, this information, because if you asked anyone being honest, can science explain everything? And you meant by that, given what we have right now, can we explain everything with science? Well, no. But in principle, could everything be explained scientifically? Now, that's a bit of a different question.
Not the 9% of atheists that are carrying the banner for magic rocks. They're going to tell you that science can't explain it.
They might think science could explain that.
Okay.
Matt Dillahunty always says,
science,
if you could measure it, if it's real, science theoretically could find a way to record it, measure it, talk about it, and then it would be part of science.
The Thor answer, right? Yeah. Science can just look like magic. It's the same thing. Right, okay. That's for you, Tim Stratton, a Marvel Cinematic Universe reference, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Must have been, because I didn't
as far as believing that science does more good than harm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a large number of Christians believe that.
Only 5% of nuns say more harm than good science does. It saes 5%
of nuns
say it does more
if you pull
harm
up
than
the
good.
science good.
But those are the ones who are thinking of like the nuclear bomb and stuff.
Yeah, but if you pull up that the image that I have, the science good, you can
really. Okay.
You can pull it up so that everyone can see, because I know there are some of you that's like, I can't wait to dig at this, and then most of you are like, well, show it to me now because I'm not going to read that whole article. So science good. Yeah, science is good. I labeled this, right? Science does more good than harm. Atheists overwhelmingly think so. Agnostics, the next big bunch. The nothing in particular, only 46%. So that's less than half in the non-atheist, non-agnostic group. Now, Christian, science does more good than harm. Only 39% believe that.
Christian, wait a minute. Religiously affiliated Christians, 39% say science does more good than harm. That's ridiculous.
9% says science does more harm than good, and 51% of Christians have the balanced view that it does equal amounts.
Make that make sense to me. Argue that point, Pritchett. Let's just clear off the spot here for a minute and try to convince me that science does more harm than good. Because I think that's a stupid
Only
claim.
9% of Christians believe that.
No. Oh, no. Yeah, because science does more good than harm.
Yeah.
What? Right. Who says Christians, 39% of Christians say that.
Yes, and 9% of Christians say science does more harm than good.
Okay, but that doesn't make sense.
And then 51% say it does equal amounts of good and bad.
Yeah, but the 39%, are you telling me only 39? Wait a minute. Science does more good than harm. That seems obvious. Are you telling me 39% of Christians won't, only 39% are willing to say that science does more good than harm?
Science tells them that the Earth is 50 billion years or 4 billion
I
years
wonder
old.
if these numbers, I hate to say this, but I wonder if these numbers would have been the same before the global experience we all had for the past several years. I wonder if these numbers would be different.
Oh, that's the Fauci-ouchie whiners.
Don't say it. Don't say it. I was explicitly, purposefully ambiguous.
Well, but it could be that. It could be, well, they're teaching people evolution, and evolution's wrong, and
I just
don't
can't
listen to
believe
that
this.
inspiring philosophy in the Catholics.
Okay, while they go take the medicines that science produced for that. You know, I mean, I don't. I am a very conservative Christian, but I think that's really sad.
Too low. Well, but I mean, 51% say it does equal amounts of good and harm, and that's compared to 45% of the nothings in particular. But 17% of atheists agree. 17% of atheists think it's about equal.
Yeah.
Right?
Now this is, like I said, Slam RN. I did say this. Now the way I think some people get there is to say, okay, but what about something like Hiroshima? Okay, now that is a different category. That's what I said a moment ago. When I said you could try to convince me, this is the route you'd want to go to try to convince me, I think. And then, of course, we'd have to get into this could get into a very interesting debate about, and where we'd have to actually look at some numbers to figure out some of these answers.
Yeah, I mean,
science.
There's always when we stack up the body count, I mean,
right,
Hiroshima kind of...
That's pretty big, but then you got to talk about...
That's a huge counterweight for the...
Of course it is. I think that's relevant, but it's also relevant to consider, inoculations and things like that have resulted in entire groups of people living. All right, let's look at...
What about
Of course, then you have to include stuff like abortion, too.
Yeah, now let's pull up the religion.
Well, wait a minute. Derek, I want to talk to Derek here. He says, wow. I've been saying since 2018, we need to focus more on more apologetics on the new age. And Jonathan never agreed. By the way, Carl Tickcrib is the GOAT for that.
All right.
Right on, man. Okay.
And your buddy from England. Oh, my gosh, I cannot believe that I am so sorry. Your name is escaping me.
What?
She's into this new age stuff. I mean, she's an apologist who talks about this all the time, and her name is
Melissa Doherty?
No.
I don't know.
I feel
Just
really bad
continue.
that I am so sorry if she's
Dead air.
watching. Yeah, your name is escaping me. I do this with my own kids, though, so I mean, you can't take it too personally, right? I didn't forget my grandson Clayton's name, but pull up religion bad, the religion bad sticker, because
what?
The religious bad image. Why did I say sticker?
What are you talking about?
I named all of the JPEGs that I saved for this that you... Yeah. Hey, they popped back up over there in your overlays.
I don't care. Where is it? What's it? Bad?
Well,
morality?
Religion bad. Religion bad.
Here comes bad religion.
Religion
bad.
is bad, right?
It's a... Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I named it that. 73%.
Now, here I'm going to go the other way. Come on. 7%, only 7% of atheists think more good than harm. Well, it's religion, right? We're not specifying Christianity.
Tom Holland hasn't been, maybe he needs to promote his book better.
Well, it is religion, though, in general. So... Okay, among Christians...
73% of atheists think religion has done more harm than good. 51% of agnostics believe that, and 33%. So the numbers go down the less atheist you are, right?
That's not surprising.
Because only 9% of Christians believe that it's done more harm than good, but that...
I could have a guy explain to me why religion writ large has done more harm than good and have a fine conversation about that question. We would be more interested in, is Christianity done more harm than good?
But 54% believe that it's done more good than harm. So just over half of Christians believe that religion has done more good than harm, right? So we're more realistic about We're more realistic about our religion than I think I know you're whining about that 39% about science, but I'm going to take up as the anti-science guy around here. We're more realistic about the history of Christianity than the atheist and agnostic bunch are about the history of science and how much harm it's done. So I'm going to take up. That just shows how much more even-handed we are.
If we're including afterlife considerations, then it's done infinitely more good.
Right, the whole Velateers thing. And then finally, but I do like the fact that there are a large number of atheists, the 21%, who don't believe that science can explain everything. Well done. First, those are what I would call open-minded atheists who aren't into scientism, right? Because that's a self-refuting position anyway, because you can't prove that from science, right? Mm-hmm. This idea that science can explain everything. And then the thing ends with morality, and if you pull up the article, you might want to read that for context.
Okay.
On
how do nuns think about morality? 83% of nuns say desire to not hurt people key to deciding right from wrong. The vast majority of nuns say it is possible to be moral and have good values without believing in God. Most religiously affiliated people agree, though by a smaller margin.
Yeah, barely smaller.
When asked how they decided between right and wrong, 83% of nuns say they desire to avoid hurting other people, and that's a key factor. And 82% of nuns say logic and reason are extremely or very important when they decide between right and wrong. Much of the analysis in this report comes from a Pew Research survey conducted on July 31st to August 6, 2023, among 11,000 respondents who are members of
That's a better sample than we get for our political polls.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, so pull up the morality thing, though, because what's interesting is the comparison. The comparison between the nuns versus the not that one. There was the other one. Sorry.
How dare you, sir?
I know that's awful, but yeah, I mean
morality.
There should be
morality too.
Yeah, morality too. So, like I said, for religiously affiliated people, 65%, which means 45% of religiously affiliated people don't consider their religious beliefs a factor in deciding between right and wrong.
That's
right.
Wow.
More religiously affiliated people think the way they were raised is more of a deciding factor than their own beliefs. And this ethic of as long as you don't hurt anyone else, it's okay to do it. 82% of religiously affiliated people, which is 1 percentage point fewer than the nuns, right? Logic and reason, 82 to 79%, right? They feel good when they choose the right thing. 69% of nuns versus 78%. And I wonder if that's because, like, religiously affiliated Christians, for example, believe, that you do receive rewards in heaven for your good works or whatever. Catholics believe that. Wanting to avoid punishment or stay out of trouble, that's a stronger pull for religiously affiliated people than non-religious. So 60% of them think that's a factor. So 40% don't consider that as high up there. So I think that, like I said, there's good news and bad news for Christians even in all of this.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested in counter-evangelism, I don't know, 1 in 5 atheists believe
But it needs to be said about this, as I'm listening to this, I'm looking and I'm going, oh, where did your thing go again?
I don't know, you killed it. Not me.
Yeah, but I needed to say something about this. Here, look. Look at this. So let's walk through these. They don't want to hurt people. Okay? Logic and reason. Okay, now here's what I'm thinking as I'm going through this. As a Christian who, yes, my religious beliefs are part of this, could I also affirm these other things as true? Okay?
Well, that's why the percentages overlap.
Right. They don't want to hurt people. Yeah, I don't want to hurt people. That's a good reason to be moral. Logic and reason. Yes, I reason what would be the most moral thing in a particular situation. I feel good when I choose the right thing. Yeah, I do. I want to stay out of trouble. I do want to stay out of trouble. The way they were raised. I am thinking about the way I was raised. They believe what goes around comes around. Now we believe in grace as opposed to karma.
Right.
And that needs to be an important
But
distinction.
52% of religiously affiliated people,
Yeah.
more so than the nuns,
just like
believe in karma.
52% of Southern Baptists sitting in a pew while their pastor is preaching on eternal security secretly think because they watched porn the night before they have lost their salvation. Because despite what you're being told, the experience of it can drive you into a state of confusion about it.
Well, okay, so 52% believe in what goes around comes. Now, that could mean from a Christian, just if you want to try to be fair. I'm trying to be unfair and cast this in the least charitable light possible. But to be fair, a Christian could interpret that, well, God disciplines those he loves. So if I sin, but that's a stretch of what goes around comes around, because that's what they were asked.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's what they were asked, and that's how they responded.
The average person, without further clarification, would think that they're talking about something like karma.
Right. And so more than half of the religiously affiliated people, the largest majority of whom are Christian, they factor, I don't want to do this thing because karma's part of it.
Yeah, if I do that, something bad's going to happen to me. And we do, like you just said, we do think karmically whenever, as Christians sometimes, even though we know that when any particular instance of evil or suffering happens in our lives, we can't necessarily know that thing is because God is disciplining us for something, but we all tend to feel that way. We're like, oh, what did I do wrong here that God's mad? Even though you have a book like Job in the Bible, every Christian still tends to, at times in their life, think, I must have done something to tick God off, that this has happened to me now, But we don't have karma, we have grace, and praise God for that.
Yeah, praise God for God's grace. And a lot of Christians are talking to their magic rocks, just like atheists are.
A lot, yeah, it was a lot.
I mean, more than you. Sarah Jane, thank you, Sarah Jane. Yeah, we need to have her on Trinity Radio. I will never forget her name as soon as she's a guest. But until you've been a guest, you're in the same category as my kids. I'm likely to forget your name on occasion.
I want to hear.
Yeah, I'm interested in the New Age stuff too, because if you look at this, even atheists are into the New Age scene, along with all the nuns. This New Age stuff is big but if you're a Christian and you don't just assume that any atheist or agnostic or non-affiliated is not. You can't even assume that an atheist doesn't consider himself spiritual, and you.
Right.
And you can have a whole conversation about, okay, what does that mean, and what is the grounding of this in a non-natural, if it's not naturalism and it's not a creator God, what is it? Mm-hmm. And then you can unpack that with them. So you can't just make assumptions about atheists, agnostics, or just the nothing in particular people.
What was her name? That
Sarah Jane.
And Derek says Sarah wrote a book too.
Yeah, well, she needs to come on Trinity Radio and promote it, because a lot of Christians in our audience are interested in this New Agey stuff too.
Yeah.
Honestly, atheist does not believe in karma, but believes it might be a good thing to act as if it's true.
But see, you are being honestly, atheist, because I would expect to hear many atheists online say something like, well, I just be good because that's what you should do, and you Christians are the ones who have to believe in that God's going to thump you or else you won't act right. So if that's what you need to keep you from doing all the bad stuff, then you just go on and believe in God. But I just believe you should be good just for goodness sakes, basically. And honestly, atheist recognizes that not everyone always is good for goodness sakes. So as an atheist, he's like, the best I can do is might as well believe karma's true or act as if it's true.
Have you ever found yourself answering poll questions honestly? Like I do every time. Like, so Fitness FAQs had a poll, can you do a handstand push-up? I was like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
You want to say, yeah, I can do that. But remember the last time I tried, I came on Trinity Radio with a shiner on my head when I collapsed. So I know I can't. So I think people, and it got me thinking, I do that a lot. Even if I don't live
up. What's the point you're making?
The point is people answer honestly. And so... It got me thinking about honestly atheists. He's probably being honest with us.
Yeah.
But if 1 in 5 atheists are going to say that they believe they're spiritual, if 2 in 10, and
how many believe that animals?
And 33%.
33%.
Yeah. And
that means the atheist, there's a 1 in 3 chance if you meet an atheist out there that it is at least definitely not the Aron Ra, Matt Dillahunty type naturalistic atheist.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you keep coming across, well, that ain't me, some of them are lying.
Well, we could just be getting the ones that are that hardcore.
Well, yeah, I mean, but like I said, I don't know.
You're saying you think there's a number of atheists who are spiritual and they know that it's not cool, and so, but they're just, I'm not going to tell anybody, I'm kind of being spiritual.
Right, because they think.
I don't think so. Because
they think the way we think, that this is just something people say so they don't sound like
that's what I
like
think
an empty
happens.
shell. I don't want to sound like an NPC.
Or I could, honestly, atheist. I'll be an honest theist here. Honestly, what it could be is just people who maybe enjoy doing some meditation, some stretching.
No, it goes into that
and
too.
It gets into some
yoga,
and I'm spiritual. I'm focusing on good thoughts, and
there's a graph on
that.
Some
health.
I mean, yoga. Some of them talk about yoga to get in touch with their inner spiritual self. I mean, but there's a breakdown on all of that, and that's why I'm telling you. I mean, we don't have time to look at everything possible, but I mean,
and this is an important thing. Like this person says, I argued with someone who claimed to be an atheist and eventually realized they believed in demonolatry. It was a very facepalm moment. I don't believe most atheists are like that, but yeah. I mean, that is true. Like if you watch any of these, if you talk to teenagers, for example, or young college students, or if you watch any of these shows, like a lot of apologists have been on this show, whatever, the show where it's a dating podcast, but they'll have like Trent Horn on there or somebody come on and debate, basically, somebody. But if you listen to the guests there answer these questions, that some of them have never thought about these things for more than 5 seconds, and they would say they're an atheist, but then later in the conversation they might well say, oh no, but in my grandma's house there's demons back there. I know there's demons. You know, that I don't, the level of consistency that we try to, as people who are probably listening right now, and of course those, me and Jonathan, we think about our worldview a lot, and we think about where there might be conflict, because it's actually an important thing for us specifically that we keep all of that stuff categorized right, and that we keep all that parsed out, because part of what we're concerned with as a part of our personality and even as a hobby is to keep our worldview consistent and look at where it's not and figure that out. Where the average person out there isn't thinking like that.
Was it? We've done a show in the past. I can't remember if it was Pew or Gallup, that some atheists do believe in God, some atheists do believe in heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, so,
which is a contradiction.
Okay, but like I said, I'm an atheist. I believe in God. I believe in heaven.
The answer there is no, you don't. Either you're not an atheist,
right,
or you don't believe in God. I mean, but both can't be true.
Going back to that, I don't know how much tightening up on beliefs it is. So when this says that 13% of nuns believe in the God of the Bible, I'm not saying we can't say that the 37% that are agnostic or atheists are part of the 13% of nuns, because you can't say that 0% of that 13% are atheists, identified as atheists on that, because we've seen that before. So it's just, you never know.
Now, and I think honestly, atheist is kind of saying, maybe on my last paragraph where I described what I think maybe the average person watching whatever is saying, he thinks that is correct, I think. But Keanu Reeves is my Jesus says, why can't you believe in demons as an atheist? Well, you can. It's just that that sits very oddly. And I would like to hear your explanation for that.
Yes, I would like to know the grounding for these.
And the type of person I'm describing is the type of person that's wearing a cross, and it's Christianity, because if any of it's true, it's probably Christianity.
Well, it goes back to the conversation about what are aliens. Right?
What are aliens?
Go back to last week's show.
Last week's episode.
Because I mean,
and please do go back to last week's episode.
Yeah.
It didn't do very well.
Yeah, so there's a lot to learn in this. This came across my desk, came onto my radar. There's a lot to learn for both Christians and atheists. If you are an apologist or a Christian who's interested in theology, like a theology geek or something like that, you really need to get to work in your church and talk to people about doctrine, talk to people about belief. Their beliefs about some of these issues, because you have people in your church who believe in magic rocks. Just like atheists. You have atheists who believe in. Now, you might be an atheist who doesn't care if you're one of these counter-evangelists, but at the same time, you can't speak for atheists. Like you say all the time, you can't speak for all atheists, so don't get mad at us if we talk about atheists who believe in the God of the Bible and magic rocks. Okay? Or you go tighten up your people.
Now, Pritchett.
But yeah, Christians, we can have a lot of fun at some of this data But we also have to recognize that there's a lot of issues in the church. It reminds me of the State of the Church Lifeway does, where it talks about where church's knowledge of the Bible and theology is kind of. So, yeah, it looks like everyone's got their own work cut out for them.
Well, Derek says here as we close the stream, I'm going to talk to my church about an apologetics class.
Amen.
Tonight, Derek, I'm going to be teaching my core facts class at One Life Church in Evansville, Indiana. You're the whole stream, all invited. Just come. Just show up. It's going to be at 6:30 to 8 at One Life East.
Or you can go to my class.
No, at West. And Jonathan is going to be at East teaching also in our church about hermeneutics.
Nah, New Testament backgrounds.
Yeah, so like we're actually doing church stuff. Yeah. And we don't want to get paid for doing church stuff. So you do church stuff too and follow Derek's lead. That's right. And with that, we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.